Up next is one of the pieces of the program I have been most looking forward to. I have the pleasure of introducing to you today two gentlemen who work on my team, and they are really two of the best and brightest Red Prairie has to offer. They have been extremely influential in their time at the company and provided a lot of the thought leadership that you have seen during the conference, whether that is the introduction of Commerce in Motion, the expanded product footprint, and just the way that we're looking at what's happening in this market. The first person is Prashant Bhatia. Prashant is our Vice President of Strategy and joined us about a year ago. And the other is Dave Bruno, who is the Director of Commerce Studies. These guys spend a lot of time thinking about the future of Red Prairie and the future of what's happening in the market. They're going to come on stage today and talk to you about some trends they see emerging in the market that could very well have an influence on the way we do business in the near future. Please join me in welcoming Prashant and Dave to the stage.
Morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave.
Morning, and I'm Prashant. We're excited to talk to you this morning about trendcasting, as Carol just alluded to. So Dave and I have spent some time thinking about some ideas that have the opportunity to impact your business, maybe in the near term, maybe a little bit further out, and we wanted to share some of those ideas with you today. We've identified 5 key things that we're going to talk about, and the goal is not to go deep in any one of these particular areas, but really introduce the topic, provoke thought, and when you walk out of here, we hope that you think about it. It allows you to go talk to your colleagues and your peers here at the conference as well as back home and really start thinking about, okay, what are these trends, what are these technologies, and what is the potential impact on my business as well as how I interact with my customers. And with that, we'll start, and I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, Prashant. And hopefully we'll have a little fun along the way, too. We have a few high-risk technical demos we're going to try to pull off here in the next 30 minutes or so. So I know my fingers are crossed to make it work. Hopefully it'll all work out well. So show of hands, how many of you in the audience today have a smartphone with NFC technology built into the phone? Thanks for the house lights. Okay, maybe 10 people. That's about what I expected. So NFC, near-field communications. So let's take a minute and let's just talk about near-field communications. As you're probably aware, it's similar to Bluetooth and RFID and Wi-Fi technology. And the power behind NFC is the ability to communicate between devices simply by tapping them together. Touch the phone to a reader, touch your phone to another phone. You can share files, you can share music, you can share information about the day-to-day job that you're doing. And I know you're probably saying, well, I get that, but we already have Bluetooth, we already have RFID. Most of you probably have a fairly significant RFID implementation in some part of your supply chain. So why do Prashant and I think NFC is so important to the future of commerce? Well, first of all, it's because it's versatile. It's standards-based, it's very interoperable. We've got a little ways to go on security, and I think that's holding back some of the advancement on the financial side of the business, but it is security ready. And most importantly, in our opinion, is there's no pairing required. It's simply intuitive enough, tap and go. Very much like the key cards. A lot of us have key cards in our pockets. We tap them against the wall to get access to the building. That's how easy NFC is to make it work to share information and data. And as I mentioned, payments are the kind of the early leader in how we're going to get NFC adopted in the world. In Asia and Europe, APAC and EMEA definitely have the momentum here. They're widely in use. Some of the biggest companies in the world, like Google, many of you maybe have Google Wallet already implemented on your Android phones. Payments have the early momentum, but what has us excited about, what has me excited about it, is much more than payments. For the people in this room today, we think there's a real opportunity to put NFC to work in your supply chains, in your stores, in your businesses. And the first example that we share with you today is a company called ATI. Some of you may be ATI clients in the room today. And ATI, they're a cold supply chain temperature monitoring business. That's what they do. They give you the audit trail to make sure that your cold sensitive products stay cold from beginning to end of the product life cycle. And they've got an implementation, very large company, lots of implementations around the world, but they just recently released their NFC logger technology. So now you put the NFC tags on the merchandise, on the pallets, on the trucks, and anybody with a smartphone up and down your supply chain can capture all of that cold supply chain data simply by tapping their phone against the tags. No longer do we need special devices and special hardware to make that happen. We simply have mobile devices in our employees' and our partners' pockets, track that data. Of course, the beauty of that, right? You have that data on your smartphone. We're now connected to the world. Very easy to share that information and make that information actionable up and down your supply chain. On the consumer side of things, we're starting to see it take real foothold in Asia. In Singapore, one of the largest cities in the world, the subway program, the transit community, has put in NFC-based posters in 6 of their busiest stations. So you walk in and out of the train, and there's posters waiting for you when you get off the train. As you can see, we sort of have a snapshot for you on the slide up there. And you walk up to the poster, you tap your phone against any one of the ads, and you can do things like order taxis, order new train tickets, even shop some of your favorite retailers like Forever 21 and Newbies and other brands like that simply by tapping your phone against the poster. But one of the funnest examples, and like I said, we're going to try to have fun with this today. I hope all the tech works for us, is a game called Skylanders. My 7-year-old nephew introduced me to this. It's very sophisticated research, my 7-year-old nephew. Activision last year released a game called Skylanders that's got NFC technology baked right into the game. I'm sure all of you, maybe you won't admit it, but most of you are still playing games like Skylanders that Prashant is so aptly demoing for us. Well done, dude.
Thank you. I've been practicing.
The beauty of this is, right, we all play the worlds, we get our characters, we travel around the world, we get money, we get treasure, we get power, we get weapons, all of those things. But when we're done, we put the remote down and the game's over and we're stuck. If I want to go to Prashant's house and play with him on his game, I got to start over and building my own treasures, my own history, my own characters. Well, Skylanders, actually, brilliant marketing, sells collectible action figures that are your characters. And the characters have NFC installed in the base and in this little portal over here that you'll see I've got on the desk. So now, I play my game with Boomer at home. Yeah, this is Boomer, I do know that. Boomer, I take Boomer, I'm ready to go over and play at Prashant's house. I simply take Boomer, and I place him on the portal.
Dave, what happened? You want to play too?
I'd love to play, but I think these people have more interesting things than watching me suck at that game. So NFC technology, all my powers, all my treasures, and everything else are now baked right into the technology on my toy. I think, you know, it doesn't really affect our day-to-day lives, this game, but you see, I think, the potential for this kind of technology, how easy it is to simply tap and play, tap and go. The experts tell us there'll be 700 million smartphones in 5 years, 4 years, 2016, so we ask you this next year and the year after that. We expect to see a lot more hands, I'm sure. And we see it in things like payment, ticketing already in Asia, peer-to-peer, tapping phones to share files and ringtones and things like that. But as it affects us here in this room, we really think the real potential is tag reading, right? Things like identification, loyalty, cold supply chain monitoring, transportation, inventory, and physical access really, we think, have great potential to help us do our jobs better, more efficiently, and more cost-effectively every day. And that's why it's one of our 5 big ideas this morning. So PB, would you like to talk to us about big data and maybe tell us exactly how big is that data?
Absolutely. Big data is big. Hopefully everyone's heard over the last 24 hours in the sessions yesterday. We heard Freakonomics talk about it today, right? Revealed data and declared data. Data is absolutely critical in our decision-making processes. Now, big data is a term that hopefully most people have heard of, but just to be clear, we'll level set from a definition perspective. So big data is defined as large quantities of typically unstructured data that cannot be analyzed using traditional tools. And a couple of key words there: unstructured, traditional tools. The number you see in front of you, 2.5 quintillion. Dave and I had to go look that up. 18 zeros. 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are generated each day. Now just imagine, Dave talked about 700 million smartphones going to be shipped by 2016. How much data will that generate? Imagine trying to analyze the data that you want to have that impacts your business on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, annual, or over multiple years. The amount of data that you have to go through, that's challenging. However, with challenge comes opportunity. Big data is an opportunity to mine for hidden patterns of data and answer questions that you haven't been able to answer to date. Really understand the impact to your business and what's happening on a day-to-day basis, how you're doing with your vendors, your carriers. You really need to be able to analyze that. McKinsey has gone so far to say big data is going to become the basis for differentiation. Companies that really embrace big data, analyze it, opportunity for differentiation, and they feel that big data becomes the underpinning and the foundation for a new wave of productivity growth and innovation that we have yet to see. This is actually happening today. You should have heard some stories yesterday, and we've got a couple of examples for you here as well. In this case, we have a specialty retailer. In this case, it's competitive disadvantage because their competitors were able to go out, gather consumer data, and really understand what their consumers wanted and start targeting segments, narrow segments of their consumer base, and start personalizing and making recommendations to the segments of the consumer base versus treating everyone the same. In this case, this particular retailer wasn't able to mine that data, wasn't able to analyze that data and understand the impact to the business, therefore they come out at a disadvantage. We've got a big box retailer really taking a look at, again, different media. You've got social blogs, you've got keywords that they're using, you've got Facebook and so forth. They're taking this data and they understood what it meant to their business. So they were able to look internally, right, and understand the impact to their business and how they could better work with their customers. As a matter of fact, there's studies that have shown that retailers have been able to increase their operating margin by over 60% by analyzing the data and being able to make those operations and efficiencies in-house. And then the last example is a pharmaceutical manufacturer. The pharmaceutical manufacturer in this case took data both inside the enterprise as well as outside the enterprise, aggregated that data, analyzed it, and they were able to find ways to improve the health outcomes and manage the overall total cost of care. These are real-life examples of big data in use today and something that each one of us ought to be thinking about. What does it mean to you? It's about being agile. It's about being responsive, proactive to your customer and proactive to your business and proactive to your stakeholders. It's about being targeted, being able to focus in on a segment of your consumer base, your customer base, and really being able to understand what are they looking for and ensure that the messages that you're creating are not tailored because not everyone is the same. Dave buys differently than I purchase. Each one of you has your own merits in terms of what you're looking for. We really need to be able to understand what is that segment and what are we targeting. And then last, innovation. We talk a lot about innovation. The opportunity of big data, again, is to find new patterns, new ideas. Maybe it's answering the same old question, but in a new way you didn't know you could do in the past. So there's a company called The Next Big Sound. The Next Big Sound is doing just that. They're trying to determine, can gigabytes predict the next Lady Gaga? What they're doing is they're taking unstructured data from various sources, Facebook, YouTube, Pandora, radio, etc. They're taking data that understands how you and I consume music. Which artists do we like? Which songs do we like? At what time of the year? And taking all these different variables into account, gathering that data, analyzing that data, and putting it into a structured format, and then producing that information back to record labels and record companies so that they can understand what is being consumed, what is popular and why. And what these record labels are starting to do is start introducing artists, starting introducing new songs, when to release a song into the market, and it's because of Next Big Sound that they're able to do that. So I think Next Big Sound can find the next Lady Gaga. We'll see if they can. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dave to talk about augmented reality, which I think is fantastic because he augments my reality every day.
Thanks, PB. This is really a fun one. This is augmented reality. It's been around for a while. You're probably sitting there thinking now, that's not really new, Bruno. Why are you thinking about this as something to impact the future? And there's been a couple developments that I think justify why we're going to talk about this for the next couple of minutes. But if you've not experienced augmented reality yet in your day-to-day lives, either at home or at work, this slide's a great illustration of that. So we see an illustration of a person holding up their mobile phone, and the person holding up the mobile phone shopping for an apartment. She holds up her mobile phone, she opens the app, and she's able to see through the viewfinder on her camera all of the listings on that street in which she's looking for a house. And she taps on the house that's most interesting to her, and she sees a photograph of the interior of the home, the bathrooms, the bedrooms, the price, those kinds of things, and obviously right down to GPS, down to the GPS level. And so augmented reality is really a live view of a physical environment augmented by computer-generated data.
Dave, I'm a little bit confused. If you talk about augmented reality being pervasive, how come I don't experience augmented reality every day?
PB, I'm willing to bet you've experienced augmented reality 1,000 times in the last year.
I'm not so sure about that. Can I get a show of hands of how many people have experienced augmented reality in the past 12 months? That's not a lot of hands, Dave.
Yeah, again, 15 maybe, 15 hands. Okay, let me see a show of hands. How many people are football fans? Watch football on television?
Love football.
Pretty much almost everybody, right? Even if you're not a fan, you probably watch it sometimes. If you have, you've experienced augmented reality with the 1st and 10 line. That's a live view of a physical environment augmented by computer-generated data, and I'd argue one of the best innovations in broadcasting for watching football in the last 10 years, right? How much better is the football watching experience when you know how far that guy's got to go to get to that first down marker? And why it's relevant to the conversation today is because augmented reality is really starting to add value to our lives. It's moving beyond novelty, being a real impact technology in both our home lives, our personal lives, and our work lives. And we've seen examples of that. You know, the technology actually was invented almost 60 years ago for the military. Everybody who watched Top Gun saw augmented reality at work. It's called the heads-up display, when they display the radar information on their windshield so the jet pilots don't have to take their eyes off the enemy in flight. And we're seeing it now in certainly probably many of you in your businesses in prototyping, design, and assembly processes. Even in surgery now, we're seeing augmented reality take a foothold. And as smartphones become more and more dominant in our lives, we're seeing it impact the consumer in areas like entertainment, gaming, navigation, and sightseeing. Like this, this is a Museum of London, the photograph on the slides from the Museum of London. They expose their entire historical photograph archive through augmented reality. So as you're touring around downtown London, you can see photographs from, I think in this case, 1937. Kind of a cool application of it. And we're seeing more and more marketers really start to find cool ways to put augmented reality to life. So we've got a real short video we've edited, so just to give you a real snapshot of one way that Volkswagen's marketing team has put augmented reality to work in downtown Toronto. Jim, please. Okay, kind of cool, right? Interesting. Taking a traditional billboard, downtown London billboard like Times Square and many other cities in the world, and bringing it to life using augmented reality. It's interesting and it's cool. Probably you guys have seen other examples of that on the internet before. But why we think augmented reality matters now more than potentially ever is because we're finding ways to move beyond novelty in the way that we interact with our consumers. We're now finding ways to use augmented reality to deliver useful information that adds value to the shopping process and ultimately, and perhaps most importantly, influences conversion rates. So we're going to share with you a demo. Prashant, you're being an excellent demo person today, I must say.
I'm glad I'm working hard.
We're going to show you an example of image recognition augmented reality. So no longer do we need the marker, no longer do we need the little black and white markers that you got to line your camera up and find that on the package or on the magazine article to access the content. No longer do we have to give up that precious real estate on our packaging to augmented reality markers. We now simply recognize the package. In this case, it's a package of gum. I'll hold it up so you guys can see it. This is just a package of gum. Nothing up my sleeve, no special tags or marks on the package of gum. And look, and you can see that Prashant, simply by holding the camera up to the gum, he's got access to a menu of content. On the right-hand side, accessing the Facebook content about that. He's got product information, prize information, and I'll ask him to give us a real quick demo of how to engage the customer right at the shelf with a game like Fruit Ninja. The Asteroid Ninja, I think, is sort of what they call it. So Prashant's doing actually a pretty good job.
I've been practicing at home.
I think you spend more time on games than you do at work.
Don't tell Carol.
So anyway, it's fun, right? It's an interesting way, and what the real outcome of this and why we think it's important, those of you in CPG will relate to this perhaps as well as anyone in food and beverage, creates infinite shelf space to produce and deliver content to the customer at the moment of truth using technology in their smartphone or their iPad put in their hands, and that's another reason why we think this is a big idea to affect the future of commerce. So PB, it's your turn. Let's talk about the circular economy, but try not to talk us in circles.
I'll do my best. So the circular economy, it's different than some of the other concepts we've talked about in that I think it's a term that not many people are familiar with. However, the concept is a little bit more complex, so we're going to start easy. So we're going to talk about consumption, linear consumption model. You take materials, you make a product, you sell the product, and eventually when the product is used, you dispose of the product. The problem with that is it requires large quantities of accessible resources and energy, which we all know are not as easily accessible now as they once were. You take a look at the two graphs on the bottom. you've got commodity prices, you've got price volatility, especially over the last 10 years, lots of ups and downs, causes a lot of unpredictability in your business, which I know you feel today. With that said, there's really no relief in sight, right? We've got globalized markets, we've got climate issues, political turmoil, middle class continues to grow, and what that means is that there's a greater need for resources, greater consumption of resources, and efficiency is no longer enough. We talk about recycling, right? Everybody talks about recycling, and rightfully so. How do we reduce product? How do we reuse product? And then how do we recycle product? What we need to do is really change our mindset and start thinking about how do we reuse product, how do you refurbish it, and then how do you reintroduce it? How do you redistribute it back into the economy? So the question that I get then is, well, Prashant, that sounds a little bit like recycling, and is there really a difference? And there is a difference. When we talk about recycling, it's really about optimizing individual components. It's about minimizing the cradle-to-grave flow of materials, of components, excuse me. When you talk about the circular economy, it's really talking about optimizing systems. It's about talking about cradle-to-cradle and metabolisms, right? Creating the cyclical metabolisms that allow you to take product and reintroduce it back into the market. Companies that can get their mind around not just recycling, but really understanding how to reuse, refurbish, and redistribute, and really talking about reducing waste, that's the opportunity that we have ahead of us. Like I said, circular economy is I'd say, a newer term, but the concept of what's trying to be done is very critical, and it's absolutely impactful. So what is it? It's about restoring and regenerating by design. Key word is design. It's not necessarily starting at the point of manufacturing. It's not starting at the point of execution. It's not starting at the point of consumption. It's truly talking about at the point of design, how do you design the product in a way that eliminates waste? If you can take a product and plan for disassembly upon its use, you disassemble it, you reuse those parts for something else, you've reduced waste. That's point number one. Point number two, it's about the energy that you're using. It's about using renewable energy. Let's use solar, let's use wind, as opposed to fossil fuels. That's a very important concept as it relates to the circular economy. And then the third is really this paradigm shift from being consumers to users. It's not about purchasing the product, it's about purchasing the right to use the product. It's about incentivizing the consumer to return the product when they're done with it so that it can be, again, reused and redistributed back into the economy and used for something else which provides value. It's a different mindset that we're talking about, and it starts at design and permeates all the way through. A great example of this is Caterpillar. Caterpillar created Cat Reman back in 1972 across 17 facilities and hundreds of parts. They actually use a term called salvage technology. Salvage technology is all about reusing components, minimizing waste, and what they found is that it's more efficient than recycling. They actually have less product going to landfill. Now, we heard Corey talk about that yesterday in terms of reducing their landfill amount and getting to a zero landfill goal. Cat Reman has the same goal by 2020, big, hairy, audacious goals, but ones that they're on their way to achieving. The other big thing that Caterpillar is able to do is attribute 8 to 10% growth year over year since 2001, thanks to this cradle-to-cradle concept. A lot of people think the biggest impact or the biggest opportunity for savings is labor. 35% of their savings have come from labor. 65% of their savings have come from materials and reducing materials that are required and reintroducing those materials, which means less going to a landfill, less waste, increased profits, increased margins. And last is we start talking about, really, is this going to hit mainstream, and when does it really impact you and I? Well, there's companies out there like Zipcar, Rent the Runway, and then there's a company out there called Tie Society. As a matter of fact, I came this morning and I decided that I needed a tie. And they provide a service that says you can use a tie once, and upon using it, I'm able to send it back. And then I've got a big formal event coming up, and I now have a service where I get the next tie. Maybe it's a nice bow tie, plaid, polka dot, we'll see what happens.
PB, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yep.
but you're talking about mainstream. I get Zipcar in the right cities, in the right places. There's a real role for that. Sparkbox, Toys, Rent the Runway, but Tie Society, is that really mainstream?
Okay, to be fair, Tie Society is not mainstream. It's something that I had to research as well as we went through this. But what is mainstream, and I think we all understand, is Netflix. Everybody knows Netflix. Netflix has done a great job embracing the concept of the circular economy and implementing that. It has changed the way that we watch movies, we rent movies, and what we expect in terms of our daily use of a movie. In this case, if I buy a DVD, I've got a number of DVDs sitting at home that sit under the TV, that sit on the shelf, they gather dust. Well, with Netflix, obviously I'm able to watch the movie, I return the movie, I get the next movie in my queue, enhances my overall experience. Dave, for example, may want to watch the same movie, he can now order it, and it continues to circulate itself back into the economy. If that movie ever goes out of circulation, right, they can use that DVD, burn it with another movie, and continue to use that asset over and over and over again. It was at the thought of design about reusing, refurbishing, and redistributing, which is what Netflix has been able to do. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dave to talk about crowdsourcing.
Thanks, PB. So our fifth and final idea today is crowdsourcing. Another idea that's been around for a while, but we think it's really ready to have an impact on the way we do business every single day. The idea of innovation without walls, borders, and orders. Pardon me. And I thought, what a great idea. Let's use Wikipedia, really the grandfather of crowdsourcing online, to get our definition of crowdsourcing. And I think you all know this so quickly. It's the idea, the act of creating goods, services, and products in close conjunction and cooperation with your customers by doing what? Giving them input into the process. Ask them what they want. Ask them for ideas on how to build better products or products that are more suited to their desires. And perhaps the best example of this at work is Linux. We probably all have Linux applications in our businesses today, probably multiple, if not dozens of Linux applications in our business. It'll do somewhere close to $8 billion in revenue this year. It'll be shipped on over 200 million phones because the Linux kernel is at the heart of the Android operating system. And the founder of Linux wrote about 2% of the code in the entire product today. Right? So not only is it extremely profitable, it turns into a product that's extremely useful and relevant to us as we try to perform our daily lives. But beyond Linux, beyond Wikipedia, again, leave it up to me to try to find a fun way to tell, fun way to tell the story of why we think it's important. I bet if I asked for a show of hands, everybody in the room, or almost everybody in the room, would say they watched the Super Bowl this year. And I bet most of you watch the commercials, unlike most of the TV watching that we do anymore. We do watch the commercials on the Super Bowl. They're the biggest marketing spend of the year. You all know how important Super Bowl commercials are to the brands that run them. And Doritos, in the last few years, has put crowdsourcing at work to create their commercials for the Super Bowl. Now, creating a commercial for the Super Bowl, many of you know, is a $2, $3, $4 million investment just for the production of the commercial. Then you've got to pay for the time, obviously, on the Super Bowl. So we're going to show you a quick clip here now of my favorite crowdsourced commercial from the 2012 Super Bowl from Doritos. Jim, please.
Honey, have you seen our cat?
Nope.
Okay, it's a good commercial, right? Funny, it gets the point across, memorable. So memorable, in fact, that that commercial and one of the other crowdsourced contest winners, the Sling Baby, which we show you a picture of here, were both in the top 10 of USA's ad meter, the most important measure of advertising success on the Super Bowl this year. 2 of the top 10 came from the crowd. It was a $20 cost to make that commercial. The benefit to Doritos, now it cost them $1 million because the Sling Baby was #1. And there was a bonus on the contest. If you were the #1 commercial on that ad, it's $1 million prize. So yeah, it cost them almost $1.5 million in prizes, and of course the cost of executing and marketing the campaign. But we're talking about multiple millions of dollars to create one of those spots. They got 6 spots out of that. 5,600 people entered. Thousands and thousands of people voted online for their favorites. All the brand engagement that comes for that, for about $1.4 million in prizes and a $20 shoot cost. Pretty amazing example, I think, PB, of crowdsourcing. And my last example today, we're just about running out of time, is craft. I see Prashant can't even wait to dig into the demo.
I can't. I need to I'm a little hungry.
So, Prashant, sorry to catch you with your mouth full, but those cookies fresh?
Fantastic.
Fresh? I wish I had some milk for you.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I dropped the ball on that. Sorry. So this is an example of crowdsourcing at work. That's lock and seal packaging there. Rip that up for us one more time, Prashant. That idea came through innovatewithcraft.com, their crowdsourcing portal. customers, suppliers, people that just think they have great ideas on how to improve the products, submit ideas. Kraft has had great luck, particularly in the area of packaging, to keep products fresh, right? What a great idea. Cookies get stale before we eat it. Well, not before I eat them, but before most people eat the cookies. Coffee, right? The flavor lock lids, so your coffee stays fresher long after you've purchased it. So, you know, to close on this subject, I know it's not the newest idea, but I hope I've shared with you some ideas that say, you know what, if we embrace this more, we open a website, we put a portal up and take ideas in, I think there's a real opportunity for you to get closer to your customers, be more relevant to your customers, and take advantage of the great knowledge and feedback that your customers have. And with that, I think that's the last of our ideas, PB.
That's
so what I like to do is wrap with one more video that maybe gives some of these ideas a little credibility. This is a video produced by Google's Project Glass. And it's their prototype, their early design prototype. Maybe you have seen it. It's gone pretty viral here in the last couple of weeks. Just came out about a month ago. Of augmented reality on your eyeglasses. And I know you've probably read about it and you've heard about it. Perhaps some of these ideas and this future that we're talking about is not so far-fetched, and we'll see what Google has to say in a short clip here now. Please, Jim.
Meet me in front of Strand Books at 2. Oh man, really?
Hey there, guy. Hey there, little guy.
Sweet. Remind me to buy tickets for Monsieur Gano tonight. Where's the music?
Okay, what they didn't tell you is how stupid you look where you're blinking and twitching your eyes to make all the interfaces work, but really not that far away. So with that, guys, we're going to wrap. We hope we gave you a few ideas to think about. If you want to read more about these ideas, go to commerceinmotion.com. We've written an ebook with all these ideas and more details behind it. Hope you learned something. Hope you had a little bit of fun.
Thank you very much.
Have a great show.
Have a great Redshift.